I was Hillary Clinton. Parties and true. So I'm number 10 out of 11, and I've been watching most of you, and most of you have not gotten up, so I know you're dying to use the bathroom. So anybody who needs to get up, please. I understand. When I first found out about this, I was very humbled. I haven't been in Huntington Beach really in 35 or 40 years. And I had no idea this would be such an illustrious group. Sitting here listening to 10 other nominees and their life stories, I'm humbled that I'm even up here with them, because everyone is unique. Everyone has their own story to tell, and they're also different. And that's what I think is so striking about tonight, is that we have athletes, we have scholars, we have people with special needs, and they all thrive in this environment, and it's very inspirational. And I have to say that all of us stand on the shoulders of the people who put this evening together. We had to go to high school, but the folks here that were the coaches and the administrators that gave of their time, worked after school, never got a dime for it. They're the true heroes, and we stand on your shoulders. And Ty, they've been talking about you in the White House. I've been there. I can tell you, don't do it, okay? Don't do it. Oh my gosh, stories I could tell. You know, they say that the human brain is like a sponge, and it is at its most creative and industrious peak between the ages of 18 and 25. And I really think that's true, because the memories that I have of Edison High School come back to me over and over and over again. And things that, you know, it's not always important stuff, it's just silly stuff. And I had forgotten that Bruce taught driver's ed. And I don't know how many of you remember, but in driver's ed back in 1973, they had a simulator. Do you remember the simulator?
Yes, yes.
For those of you who don't remember, I can tell you, God's honest truth, it was a matchbox car with a rolling road. And your idea was you were supposed to have your foot on the brake and the gas and move the matchbox car in order to follow the road along. And we're all still here, so it must have worked. I don't know. You know, when I think of Edison, I think of first loves and first cars. Come to think of it, my first love was my first car. And it never said no, never talked about it. And I think about the fact that there were 4,200 students all attending this place at the same time, from 7 in the morning until 5 o'clock at night. And if you were here, you couldn't help but bump into somebody, because there was everybody in the hall all the time. And it was a wonderful place to experience things. I remember in my freshman year, there used to be lockers behind the bowl. Everybody remembers the lockers. And in my freshman year, it was my job to make sure that those lockers were sanded and masked with tape so that we could spray paint them in Charger gold. 4,200 lockers. And I did that every day for the entire summer. And it's funny, I was sitting here and looking at the cafeteria, and I can remember sanding and sanding and sanding. And the girls' cheerleaders, this was in the summertime, and they were getting ready for the fall season for all the football players, who I always envied. And they sat there doing their routines to recorded music, and they watch themselves in the reflections of these mirrors right here. I don't know, do they still do that? They still do that. Well, in my day, they were dancing to the sounds of, now wait for it, the Fifth Dimension, right? When music was music. And my daughter over here is saying, what's the Fifth Dimension? And it's not a place of things and ideas, like Rod Serling said. No, it's 4 people singing the Wedding Bell Blues. So just historical fact. But, you know, I think that fun historical fact, besides the fact that I had a job here, was that most of the people who were at Edison had summer jobs. Now, I hear that's not very fashionable anymore, but from where I come from, I think it's very important that kids have summer jobs when they're in high school. It's important to know that money does not come on a plastic card supplied by mom and dad with no strings attached, right?
Yes.
And we need to do more of that. You know, you could have worked at the McDonald's, which was brand new, lines around the block when McDonald's opened up. You could have been at Ralph's Supermarket and joined your first union. Anybody remember Farrell's Ice Cream Parlor? The Mighty Trough. Remember the trough? There was a silver bowl filled with 32 scoops of ice cream, whipped cream, walnuts, and hot fudge carried around by 4 guys in a wooden, whatever you call that thing. It's back? You're kidding.
The zoo.
Well, a summer job, that's how you paid for your gas. That's how you had the money to take somebody out on a date, which is also not in style anymore, I understand. But again, sanding those lockers and being part of that was just really being part of the spirit here. So I feel like my sweat and tears were put both into the physical plane as well as into my classes. But mostly, when I think of Edison, I think of the people. And you know, when you're 10th out of 11 speaking, a lot of the good lines have already been taken. But, well, you can tell, that's for sure. I'd have been like crossing things out as everyone was talking. Can't do that, can't do that. But anyway, I wanted to mention a few people that were really special to me. One of them was a gentleman by the name of Robert Stolte. He was an English teacher. And the way that I always remember Robert Stolte is, I'm sure all of you have a bank account where you have to go online and they ask you some stupid question that you're supposed to remember for your ID. And so, you know, what's your favorite color? When did you have your first period? Now they don't. One I always get is they say, where was your wedding rehearsal dinner held? And I'm like, how do they know you're married? But anyway, the easy one for me is always, who's your favorite teacher in high school? And for me, it was Bob Stolte. And Bob drove me like a 5-speed transmission. I mean, I worked my butt off in that class, and I never thought I was going to get out of there alive. In my first week, in my very first assignment, two-page document written by hand, and I get it back, and I look at it and I go, that's funny, I thought I used black ink. Because the whole thing was red. And right in the middle, at the top and the center, was a big red circle with an F, and then that F was underlined 3 times. F for failure, F for flunk, F for no future, F for you have to effing be kidding me. And so I walked up to him and I said, Mr. Stolte, I don't understand it. I'm the only one in the class that got an F. And he said, yeah. I said, well, how come? And he said, because you can do better. And he was right. And Bob Stolte made me a better writer. And for that, I will be forever grateful. Several people tonight have mentioned John Pawson. And unfortunately, I was here last year for his funeral. And so I really just want to say a couple things about John. But before I do that, I'd like to recognize a fellow Edison alum, and that is his wife, Gail Pawson. Gail. And what I would have to say about John is that John, well, back up. You really never chose John Pawson as your friend. John chose you. And I really never understood the methodology that he went through to select certain people that he did point out and befriend. And I think that, you know, maybe part of it was that he saw potential in certain people. But there are a lot of people that have potential. And then I also thought that John had this unique way of finding people who were wounded and needing help. And John was the type of person that was always there to lend a hand. But if you were John's friend, you were in for a treat for a lifetime. How many of you have been on John's boat, right? Not too many. Well, see, many of you aren't his friends. See, now, if you had been his friend, you would have got a trip on the boat. And any of you ate at the theater, Oregon Pizza? You remember that one? That's really obscure. John is the only man in the world who ever thought that having a pipe organ and a pizza in the same place was a great idea. And that lasted for about 3 months, and I think if Gail had been with him, it would have never gotten there, right? Nipped in the bud, right? And I certainly want to thank Linda Carpenter, or Hillary, as I'll now refer to you going forward. And, you know, as Linda mentioned, she wasn't my teacher, but we still seemed to, our paths intersected quite a bit. And, you know, she was talking about the Bank of America Awards, and she was right. At the time, it was a pretty big deal. I had a dinner at the Century Plaza Hotel and what have you. And that was when, you know, banks actually made money, and they spent a little bit on good causes, but that's long gone. But she has mentored hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of students throughout her lifetime. Tonight I found out that she took students on 45 trips abroad during her career. And again, no extra money, no recognition, for a greater cause. And I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for everything. So looking back, people ask me, and they say, well, what achievement after Edison has meant the most to you? And she mentioned that at a young age I was on the White House senior staff and did a lot of lobbying and testifying in Congress and such. So, you know, those were great. But, you know, in looking back and thinking about it, I think I did a lot of those things not to please myself, but to please and impress others. And it took me many years and a lot of therapy to come to that realization, but I think it's accurate. And so what I have learned after 60 years is that truly to be successful, you have to do something that's true to yourself. And, you know, when I was in politics or when I worked for big companies, I found that my future wasn't really tied so much to what I did, but rather to what some guy higher up the food chain did. And, you know, whether it was a president or a senator or a CEO, what happened to me had a lot more to do with what happened to them. Hitch your wagon to the right horse, and you're lucky. You get a free ride, at least for a while. Choose the wrong one, and you go down with the ship, as Ty, I'm sure, has experienced throughout his career. Sometimes, what it takes to be successful in a large organization, what is valued, may not be the things that you value. In fact, the things that you value may be the opposite of what they think is important. Sometimes your success is not the result of how hard you work, how smart you are, or what risks you're willing to take. Sometimes success is who you know, how well you fit in, how sharp your elbows are, or whether you can avoid stepping on the wrong person's toes along the way. When I came to that realization, I was well past 40. Up until then, I was too afraid to rely completely on myself and take a risk. So if you were to ask me what I'm most pleased about, I'd tell you to read it in the Washington Post. But it's not what you think. My name isn't in some headline. Nobody's asking me for my opinion. What I'm most proud of, I don't know if I brought it, is the ad that appears every day in the paper for the company that I started in 2005. And that has given me so much more pleasure and satisfaction than any of the other things that I did in my life. Because, well, it was my own. And I'm proud of it because I had the courage to step out of the mainstream to do it. And to do something not because it's sexy or high profile or because it would impress other people, but because it was an opportunity to build something that could rise or fall on the risk that I was willing to take and the work that I was willing to put in. No net, but no ceiling. So I say ditch the glamour and forget the headlines if you want. Maybe you want to be an artist. Maybe you want to be a parent with 4 kids at home. Maybe you want to play in the Super Bowl. But do it because you want to do it, not because you feel as if you don't have a choice. If you're lucky enough to find a passion and you're willing to pursue it relentlessly, you will always be successful. And you can be in your own personal Hall of Fame. But back to Edison. This place was like an incubator. And it held the aspirations of young people who in most cases, when they're going here, have absolutely no idea what they're capable of. But this place has made a difference for so many, certainly the people here tonight. For me, Edison gave me training wheels and the confidence to go back into that part of life that doesn't come with an owner's manual, and for that I will be forever grateful. And one thing I have to say though, did we have to use this picture? I mean, that hair, I gotta tell you a funny story about the hair. So, they used to have something called the shit hot comb. You ever remember those things? It's a hair dryer and a comb. And I used to spend a good 10 minutes every day just getting that flip just right. And the thing about it was that I blew out those hot combs. And I found out that at the May Company, you could bring them back without a receipt for a long, long time. I probably went through 25 hot combs. And they never caught on. It's amazing. But anyway, thank you so much. It's been a great honor. And,